Hello everybody, I am Liz and I haven't really seen your guys' faces in just over a month because I had semester finals and then I took my MCAT. So I'm well on my way to applying to medical school. So now that all of that is done, I wanted to finally talk to you guys and do a quick April wrap up and then talk to you guys about what I'm currently reading now that it is past the middle of May. So without further ado, I will get started right away with the books that I finished in April. And I only read 2 books in April, so I didn't stick with my awesome reading that I did in March. I know that even though I only finished 2 books, I started a lot of books and I read a ton, even though I never actually ended up finishing the books until May. So without further ado, the first book I finished was The Immortal Life of Henrietta Lacks by Rebecca Skloot. I had to read this for a book report that I did in one of my research classes, and it was really interesting. It's about a girl named Henrietta Lacks. She was around in the 1950s, 1940s, and she finds out that she has cancer. And so when she goes in for treatment, they biopsy the tissue and they kind of send it off to this researcher who is able to culture her cells, and her cells never actually die. They just keep reproducing in these cultures, and this is the first type of cell structure that's ever done this. And so her cells have been used to create many types of vaccines, like the polio vaccine that's been used for STD research, and so many, any type of other like cellular research. Her cells have been doing that. And she's this poor black woman, and they've never received any type of compensation for this work, even though each vial of these HeLa cells runs for about $20 a pop. And so it's a very lucrative business, and yet her family doesn't see any of that money. They're super poor. They can't even receive medical treatment. So it definitely has a lot of really great ethical discussions, and that was a lot of what we did in my research class, is we talked about all of those ethical implications and whether or not actually taking those cells was good, with the lack of informed consent and everything like that that happened in that 1940s, 1950s time era. And so it was very interesting, and it really made me think also about like the author Rebecca Skloot's actual like reasoning and thoughts behind why she wrote this book, and whether it was really to benefit the family or benefit herself. And so it was very interesting and posed a lot of really interesting questions. So I definitely ended up really enjoying this book and reading it. I learned so much from it, and I really actually enjoyed how Rebecca Skloot like wrote the story by going forward and backward in time with her discovery, and also with the history of Henrietta Lacks' family. So I think I would definitely give it at least a 4 out of 5 stars. And then the last book I read was Ringer by Lauren Oliver. It is the second and final book in the replica duology. It takes place where there has like a dual perspective, where you read one side of the book for Gemma and the other side of the book for Lyra, and they're both discovering themselves and also the plot behind this Haven Institute, which is responsible for cloning humans. And so it's a very interesting, so many things happen, and definitely in the sequel, so many things happen. But again, I don't think I like Lauren Oliver's writing style. I remember from the first book really enjoying Lyra's point of view as opposed to Gemma's point of view, because Gemma was very much body shaming, which I do have to say, thankfully, there was not so much body shaming in the second book. I'm definitely glad that I read the sequel and really concluded the story and kind of figured out what happened with everything going on. So because I had just a lot of issues with word choice and writing structure and phrases used to depict characters' reasonings and emotions and all that, I ended up giving it a 2.5 out of 5 stars because I did still really enjoy the plot, but I just felt like there was so much more needed from the story and the writing, especially because Lauren Oliver is a fairly well-known author who has several books under her belt. So books I am currently right now reading, we have Night Film by Marisha Pessl. I've heard of this book several times, particularly by Emma from Emma's Books, and sounds like such an interesting mystery thriller about this reporter who's basically had his reputation trashed by going after this occult movie director, and a few years later the movie director's daughter ends up dying in kind of interesting circumstances, and so he takes it upon himself to kind of see whether or not the daughter actually died through suicide or whether she was murdered. And so I'm about 100 pages in, 70 pages in. I am 70 pages in, and I'm very intrigued by it, but I also didn't realize that this book was so long because even though it looks pretty thin, all of the pages are super thin. And so this is about a 600-page read, and I was not expecting that, so it's going to take me quite some time to go through it, but I do enjoy how there's mixed media in here, like it has websites and stuff, which is really cool and different and very interesting, and so I'm really excited to read more of this book. And the next book I'm reading, guys, is so exciting because this book has sat on my shelf for 3, possibly 4 years. It has been on my shelf for so long, I am embarrassed by it. But I'm finally reading it, and that's Cinder by Marissa Meyer, guys. I am finally reading the Lunar Chronicles, which is amazing, and I am like a fourth of the way through right now. And what's really interesting is even though I started with the audiobook, I picked up the physical book, and I actually just have this need, this urge to read the physical copy instead of listening to the audiobook. And it's not because I don't like the audio. I actually do like the audio. I just don't know why I have this need to read the physical copy. I don't usually have such a urge to do so. And if you haven't heard what Cinder's about, it is a Cinderella retelling with sci-fi elements. There is Cinder, who's a cyborg, and they're part of this Commonwealth, which is kind of like Earth as it is now. And then there are the Lunars, which is this alien race that is now in negotiations with the Commonwealth, and it's kind of in this post-Asian society right now, and I'm really having a good time. I enjoy Marissa Meyer's writing so much and just how she's going about with this story arc so far. So I am so stoked to keep going, and I am so happy that I'm actually reading this book. Another book that I plan on reading and picking up really, really soon is Neverwhere by Neil Gaiman. I know last December, or was it November? November. It was last November I was reading this book, and I never actually ended up finishing it because I was listening to it on audio through all of your guys' amazing recommendations to listen to it via audiobook. I loved it so much, but I just ran out of time, and because I do audio through my school library and the Overdrive app, I only have 3 weeks to listen to an audiobook, and then it disappears from my phone. So I finally got my hands on it for the second time, and I'm gonna start listening to the audiobook from the beginning and just plow through and listen to it, and I am so excited to finally finish this book. So there you have some of the books I am currently reading, and I really hope that I can read even more books than what I'm kind of planning on right now through to the end of the month. We'll see how fast I go through these books. I'm so stoked. Please let me know in the comments down below what books you are currently reading and whether or not you are enjoying them, or you're still trying to wait to get for the feel of the books you're currently reading. Thank you guys so much for watching. I really appreciate you sticking around even through my ridiculously long hiatuses and just, you know, sticking out, being there with me, communicating with me in the comments. I really appreciate you guys. Thank you guys so much, and I love you. Bye!